I never planned to fall in love on a fishing boat in the middle of the Pacific, but I guess the best things in life tend to catch you off guard. I was 24, freshly graduated with a degree in marine biology that hadn't led anywhere except to student debt and my parents' disappointed silences across the dinner table. So when my uncle offered me a spot on his commercial fishing crew for the summer, I took it without thinking twice. 6 weeks at sea, decent money, and an escape from my landlocked life in Denver. What could possibly go wrong? The first time I saw Reed, he was coiling rope on the deck with the kind of easy competence that made it look like an art form. The morning sun caught the edges of his dark hair, and when he glanced up and caught me staring, he gave me this crooked smile that made something flip in my chest. I told myself it was just seasickness, even though we were still docked. He was probably 26 or 27, with the kind of weathered hands that told you he'd been doing this work for years. There was a small scar above his left eyebrow that I found myself wanting to ask about. My uncle introduced us quickly. Reed was the lead deckhand, which meant he'd be showing me the ropes, literally and figuratively. His handshake was firm and warm, and he held my gaze for just a second longer than necessary. "Don't worry," he said, his voice rough like he'd spent too many mornings shouting over the wind. "Everyone's terrified their first time out. You'll get your sea legs soon enough." I wanted to tell him I wasn't terrified of the ocean. I was terrified of the way my pulse had kicked up when his hand touched mine. The first week was brutal. I learned quickly that marine biology textbooks had not prepared me for the reality of commercial fishing. The work was relentless, physical, and exhausting. My hands blistered within days despite the gloves. I was slower than everyone else, clumsier, constantly in the way. But Reed was patient in a way that surprised me. He'd show me how to do something once, then watch as I fumbled through it, never making me feel stupid when I messed up. "You're doing fine," he'd say, adjusting my grip on a line or demonstrating the proper way to secure a net. "I've seen guys quit after 2 days. You're still here." I found myself watching him when I thought he wasn't looking, the way he moved across the deck even in rough seas, perfectly balanced. The way he'd push his hair back when he was concentrating on something. The way he'd laugh at the other crew members' jokes, his whole face transforming. I'd catch myself and feel this wash of confusion. I'd had girlfriends before. I'd been in love, or what I thought was love, with Sarah for 2 years in college. This felt different. This felt like standing at the edge of something vast and unknown, more frightening than any ocean. We were 10 days out when the weather started to turn. I'd seen storms on the forecast, but nothing prepared me for the reality of being in one. The sky went from clear blue to a bruised purple-grey in what felt like minutes. The waves that had been manageable swells became towering walls of water. My uncle started barking orders, and everyone moved with urgent purpose. Reed grabbed my shoulder as I stood frozen, watching a wave crash over the bow. "Stay focused," he said, his face close to mine so I could hear him over the rising wind. "Keep your safety line clipped and do exactly what I tell you. We're going to be fine." The storm hit with a violence that shocked me. I'd never felt so small, so insignificant. The boat pitched and rolled. And even with my safety line secured, I felt like I might be thrown into the churning water at any moment. Rain lashed down so hard it felt like needles on my skin. Within minutes, I was soaked through, my clothes plastered to my body, water running into my eyes and mouth. I was supposed to be helping secure equipment, but mostly I was just trying not to die. Reed was everywhere at once, shouting instructions, making sure everyone was safe, working with the kind of calm efficiency that probably saved our lives. I don't know how long the storm lasted. It felt like hours, but it might have been less. At some point, a wave hit me hard enough that I lost my footing and slammed into the deck rail. The impact knocked the wind out of me, and for a terrifying moment I couldn't breathe. Then Reed was there, hauling me up, checking me over with hands that were surprisingly gentle despite their roughness. "You hurt!" he shouted over the storm. I shook my head, even though my ribs ached, and I was pretty sure I'd have bruises everywhere. He kept one hand on my arm, steadying me, and I realized I was shaking. Not from cold, though I was freezing, from fear, from adrenaline, from the way he was looking at me like I mattered. When the storm finally broke, we were all exhausted. My uncle sent everyone below deck to dry off and rest. I peeled off my soaked jacket with numb fingers, my teeth chattering so hard I could barely think. My shirt was plastered to my skin, and when I tried to pull it off, my bruised ribs protested sharply enough that I gasped. Reed was across the small crew quarters, changing into dry clothes, and he looked over at the sound. "You are hurt," he said. Not a question. He crossed to me in 2 steps, and before I could protest, he was helping me ease the wet shirt over my head. His fingers brushed my skin, and I felt that touch everywhere. "Jesus, Dylan, you're freezing," he said, and I realized I was still shaking. He grabbed his bag and pulled out a faded blue thermal shirt. "Here, put this on." I stared at it stupidly. "That's your shirt," I said, my voice coming out rough. "Your only dry shirt?" He shrugged, already wearing his own thermal. "I've got this one on. You need it more." When I hesitated, he actually helped me into it, pulling it carefully over my head, guiding my arms through the sleeves like I was a child. The shirt was warm from being in his bag, and it smelled like him, like salt and soap and something I couldn't name. It was too big, the sleeves hanging past my hands, and when he stepped back to look at me, something shifted in his expression. "Better?" he asked, his voice quieter than before. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. We were standing too close in the cramped quarters. I could see the water still dripping from his hair, the way his chest rose and fell with his breathing. "Thank you," I managed finally. "For everything. For keeping me alive out there. For this." I gestured at the shirt. He smiled, that crooked smile that did things to my heart rate. "That's the job," he said, "taking care of the crew." But the way he was looking at me didn't feel like it was just about the job. That night I couldn't sleep. My ribs ached every time I shifted position, and my mind wouldn't stop replaying the storm, the fear. The moment Reed's hands had touched my skin, I was still wearing his shirt. I knew I should have given it back, but I couldn't bring myself to take it off. Around 2 in the morning, I gave up on sleep and climbed up to the deck. The ocean was calm now, almost eerily so after the violence of the storm. The stars were out, more stars than I'd ever seen, scattered across the sky like someone had thrown diamonds against black velvet. I wasn't alone. Reed was standing at the rail, looking out at the water. He turned when he heard me approach, unsurprised. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked. I shook my head and joined him at the rail, leaving a careful space between us. For a while we just stood there in comfortable silence, listening to the gentle sound of water against the hull. "You did good today," he said eventually. "A lot of guys would have panicked." I laughed, the sound bitter. "I did panic." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I felt naked under his gaze despite wearing his shirt and my jeans. "No," he said, "you were scared, but you didn't panic. There's a difference. You kept working. You trusted me. That takes guts." I didn't know what to say to that, so I said nothing. We fell back into silence. But it felt different now, charged with something I didn't want to name. "Why do you do this?" I asked finally. "The fishing, I mean. It's dangerous and exhausting, and you're gone for weeks at a time." He was quiet for so long I thought he might not answer. I like the simplicity of it, he said finally. Out here, things make sense. You work hard, you stay safe, you take care of your crew. There's no pretending to be something you're not. The ocean doesn't care about any of that. There was something in his tone that made me look at him more closely. What would you have to pretend about on land? I asked carefully. He turned to face me fully, leaning his hip against the rail. The moonlight caught his features, making him look almost unreal. I grew up in a small town in Alaska, he said. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone, and everyone has opinions about how you should live your life. My dad's a fisherman. His dad was a fisherman. It's what men in my family do. It's also the kind of place where being different isn't exactly celebrated. My heart was beating too fast. Different how? I asked, even though I thought I knew. He held my gaze, and I saw the moment he decided to trust me. I'm gay, he said simply. Have been my whole life, even when I tried real hard not to be. Out here, it doesn't matter. I'm just Reed, the guy who knows how to work a boat. On land, back home, I'm always having to be careful, to watch what I say, to not look at someone the wrong way. The confession hung between us in the salt air. I should have said something reassuring, something supportive. Instead, what came out was, I think I might be too. Different, I mean. The words surprised me as much as they seemed to surprise him. I'd never said it out loud before, never even fully admitted it to myself. But standing there in his shirt, still feeling the ghost of his hands on my skin, I couldn't pretend anymore. I've never, I started, then stopped. I mean, I've dated women. I thought that was what I wanted. But lately, the last few years, I've been wondering if I was just doing what I thought I was supposed to do. Reed moved closer, closing the distance between us. And now? He asked softly. I looked at him, at the way the starlight reflected in his eyes, at the scar above his eyebrow I still wanted to ask about, at his mouth. Now I'm pretty sure I've been lying to myself, I said, because I've never felt about anyone the way I feel when I'm around you. It was the bravest thing I'd ever said. For a moment he just looked at me, and I thought I'd made a terrible mistake. Then he reached out and tucked a strand of my wet hair behind my ear, his fingers lingering on my cheek. How do you feel when you're around me? He asked. And his voice was rough in a way that had nothing to do with shouting over wind. Terrified, I admitted. Excited. Like I'm standing at the edge of something huge, and I want to jump, but I don't know if there's water below or rocks. He smiled, and it was different from his other smiles, softer and more vulnerable. There's water, he said. I'm already in it. Have been since you stepped on this boat and looked at me like I was the most interesting thing you'd ever seen. My breath caught. I thought I was hiding it, I said. He laughed quietly. You were not hiding it. You stare at me constantly. I noticed the first day. I felt my face heat despite the cool night air. That's embarrassing. He shook his head. It's not. Because I've been staring back. He was so close now I could feel the warmth radiating from his body. I've never kissed a man before, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I've never kissed anyone I actually wanted this badly. His thumb brushed across my cheekbone. We don't have to do anything you're not ready for, he said. But Dylan, I really want to kiss you right now. I closed the last few inches between us, my answer clear. When his lips met mine, it felt like something inside me that had been locked up tight suddenly opened. The kiss was gentle at first, questioning, and then deeper as I pressed closer to him. His hands came up to cut my face, and I gripped his shirt, afraid I might fall if I let go. When we finally broke apart, I was breathing hard. "Oh," I said stupidly. He grinned. "Yeah, oh." We kissed again, and this time I let myself feel everything I'd been pushing down. The want, the need, the rightness of it. We only stopped when we heard footsteps above deck, springing apart like guilty teenagers. It was just one of the other crew members coming up for a smoke, but it reminded us where we were. "We should probably be careful," Reed said, and I heard the regret in his voice. "Your uncle's been good to me. Gave me this job when I needed it. And not everyone on the crew would be okay with this." I understood, even though part of me wanted to shout it from the mast. "Okay," I said. "We'll be careful." The next 3 weeks were the best torture of my life. During the day, we worked, and Reed treated me the same as always, patient and professional. But at night, when the rest of the crew was asleep, we'd find each other. Sometimes on deck under the stars, sometimes in the tiny storage room where we could close the door. We'd talk for hours about everything and nothing. He told me about growing up in Alaska, about realizing he was gay when he was 14, and spending years trying to pray it away. I told him about my failed attempts at relationships with women, about always feeling like I was playing a role. And we'd kiss until we were both dizzy with it, learning each other, taking it slow because we had time, and because first times should mean something. "What happens when we get back to land?" I asked him one night, my head on his shoulder as we sat on the deck. We were 3 days from port, 3 days from the real world. He was quiet, his fingers tracing patterns on my arm. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I live in Seattle between fishing seasons. You're in Denver. That's not exactly close." My chest tightened. "So this is just a summer thing? Something that stays on the boat?" He pulled back to look at me, his expression serious. "Is that what you want?" I shook my head. "No. I want more. I want to figure out what this is, what we could be. I just don't know how." He kissed me, soft and sweet. "Then we'll figure it out," he said. "I've spent too many years hiding who I am, settling for stolen moments and pretending. I don't want to do that with you. I don't know what it looks like yet, but I want to try." Relief flooded through me. "I want to try too," I said. "I want to tell my parents. Come out properly. Stop living half a life." He smiled against my lips. "Look at us, making plans." I kissed him again. "I'm wearing your shirt," I said. "I think we're past the point of no plans." The last day on the boat, my uncle pulled me aside. My heart hammered. Sure, he'd figured it out, but he just clapped me on the shoulder and said, "You did good, Dylan, real good. Reed says you've got natural instincts for this work. You want to come back next season?" I looked over at Reed, who was watching us with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Yeah," I said. "I'd like that." My uncle nodded. "Good. You've got a spot if you want it. Reed could use someone reliable working with him." As we docked in Seattle, Reed helped me gather my gear. The rest of the crew was already making plans to hit the bars, to see their families, to enjoy their time on solid ground. Reed and I moved slowly, neither of us quite ready for this to end. "So," he said, handing me my bag, "I've got an apartment about 20 minutes from here. It's small, but there's a decent couch if you need a place to crash before your flight." I looked at him, at this man who'd given me his last dry shirt in a storm, who'd shown me who I really was, who'd kissed me like I was precious. "I might need to change my flight," I said. Stay a few extra days, if that's okay. His smile was answer enough, but he said it anyway. That's more than okay. We took a cab to his place, and it was small like he'd said, a studio with big windows that looked out over the water. It was neat and simple, with books stacked on shelves and photographs of the ocean on the walls. It was so completely him that I felt something in my chest expand. "Welcome to my place," he said, suddenly seeming nervous. I dropped my bag and crossed to him, wrapping my arms around his waist. "Thank you," I said, "for everything. For being patient with me. For showing me it's okay to want this." He held me tight, his face buried in my hair. "Thank you for being brave enough to jump," he said. We stood like that for a long moment, just holding each other, before he pulled back and kissed me. This kiss was different from the ones on the boat. There was no need to rush, no fear of being caught. We had time, we had privacy, we had possibility, we had... When we finally broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine. "I'm falling in love with you," he said quietly. I probably shouldn't say that yet, but it's true. My heart felt too big for my chest. "I'm already there," I said. "I think I started falling that first day when you smiled at me." He laughed, and it was the most beautiful sound. "We're idiots," he said fondly, "falling in love on a fishing boat." I kissed him again. The best kind of idiots. We spent the next 4 days barely leaving his apartment, learning each other in ways we couldn't on the boat, talking about the future, making plans. I called my parents and told them I was staying in Seattle a bit longer, that I'd met someone. My mum asked if she was nice, and I took a breath and said, "He's wonderful." The silence on the other end was long, but not as terrible as I'd feared. When I finally flew back to Denver, it was with Reed's shirt in my bag and his number in my phone and plans to visit in 2 weeks. It was with the knowledge that I was gay, that I was in love, that I was finally living an authentic life. The next few months weren't easy. Coming out to my family was hard. My dad didn't speak to me for 3 weeks. My mum cried and asked where she'd gone wrong. But slowly, gradually, they started to come around. And Reed was there through all of it, on the phone every night, visiting when he could, being exactly what I needed. 6 months later, I moved to Seattle. I got a job at an aquarium using my marine biology degree in a way that actually made me happy. Reed and I got a bigger apartment together, one with room for both of us and all our combined stuff. We went back out on my uncle's boat the next summer, and this time we didn't have to hide. My uncle had figured it out months ago and told us gruffly that he didn't care who we loved as long as we did our jobs. Some of the crew took longer to adjust, but most of them came around. Now it's been 2 years since that storm, since Reed gave me his last dry shirt, and I started to understand who I really was. We're planning to get married next spring. A small ceremony on the water because that's where our story began. I still have that blue thermal shirt. It's worn and faded now, but I keep it folded in my drawer because it represents everything. The moment I stopped pretending. The moment I chose to be brave. The moment I fell in love with a deckhand who saw me for who I really was and loved me anyway. Sometimes the best things in life do catch you off guard in the middle of a storm, when someone offers you their last dry shirt and you realize you've found home.